Joe Biden went to Saudi Arabia, right? He called Saudi Arabia. He said, look, I need you to flood the market with oil and lower the oil prices for the United States. Saudi Arabia said, absolutely not. OPEC Plus will not do that. We will actually cut oil production and we will target those cuts toward the United States. And that infuriated the Biden administration. This goes against all of the rules that have been outlined since the U.S. became a hegemonic power, since it instituted the petrodollar in the early 1970s. It goes against all of those rules. However, there is something very interesting going on since the Ukraine crisis, and that is Saudi Arabia is becoming more and more independent in its foreign policy. We know about Saudi Arabia's egregious war crimes in Yemen. We know about Saudi Arabia's egregious crimes of repression inside of Saudi Arabia toward its own minority populations, etc. We know of Saudi Arabia's role in funding terrorism and waging war against regional countries in the region, like Syria, for example, its role in fueling the invasion of Libya, the proxy war inside of Libya that was happening before the invasion. All of that is true. But now, because of the Ukraine crisis, Saudi Arabia is angry. And the reason why it's angry is because it is being treated as the tail of the dog. So the United States thinks it's the dog, that it can control whatever is at its back end. And it sees Saudi Arabia as its back end, right? But now, because the Ukraine crisis is causing all of these contradictions, Saudi Arabia is pissed. And for good reason. Because Saudi Arabia is being told that in the midst of an economic worldwide recession, that it should go against its own interests, hurt Russia, which Saudi Arabia has a decent relationship with, and also go against China and Russia, because it wasn't too long ago that Joe Biden was fist bumping with MBS, right? This happened within the last 6 months. Joe Biden was fist bumping with MBS and trying to persuade him to cut ties with Russia and China. So this has some context to it. But now things have gotten serious. Now, according to South Africa's president, Cyril Ramaphosa, the president of the ANC in South Africa, Saudi Arabia is interested in joining the BRICS alliance, right? The BRICS alliance is Brazil, it is Russia, it is India, it is China, and it is South Africa. And so the BRICS actually have their own website. So I'm taking this right from their information portal. And they've reported on this today, although there were reports on this beforehand in other sources. BRICS is a financial alliance. It's an economic alliance of these major countries, right? China, the biggest manufacturing sector in the world. Russia, one of the biggest energy exporters in the world. South Africa, one of the biggest economies in Africa, on the African continent. India, of course, a huge economy as well. And then Brazil, in Latin America, Brazil occupies a very important place, and all of them are complementary. But the big worry here is that Saudi Arabia is the key cog in the petrodollar arrangement. It really is what keeps the US dollar afloat. All oil transactions are pegged on the US dollar because of mainly Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia is the biggest oil exporter, the biggest oil producer in the world. And so this comes just 4 months, right? Just a little under 4 months ago, Iran applied for BRICS. So Iran is one of the biggest gas markets in the world. It's a huge gas producing nation. So you have these major, even though their economies, I mean, Iran is a major economy, Saudi Arabia, its economy of scale, you know, it's not anywhere close to maybe Western powers, but its importance in the overall world economy cannot be questioned. So this is a huge deal, all right? So according to Cyril Ramaphosa, who was just meeting with MBS and the Saudi government, says that Saudi Arabia has expressed interest in joining the BRICS alliance. This was revealed by him during his 2-day visit to the kingdom. He said, quote, "The Crown Prince, Prime Minister Mohammed bin Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud, did express Saudi Arabia's desire to be part of BRICS, and they are not the only country, said Ramaphosa. He confirmed this during an engagement with the media. So then it said BRICS held its first summit in 2009, with South Africa joining the following year. The bloc has been seen as an alternative to the dominance of Western countries. He said, we did say that BRICS having a summit next year under the chairmanship of South Africa in South Africa, and the matter is under consideration. A number of countries are making approaches to BRICS members, and we have given them the same answer, that it will be discussed by the BRICS partners, and thereafter a decision will be made. So he's definitely referencing as well. He's referencing Iran as well. But he also said other countries. So there's obviously a growing interest in this. And why would that be? I mean, there are many reasons why this would be. And for one, Saudi Arabia finds itself in a very difficult situation. Russia is the most sanctioned country in the world. And with that comes economic calamity. Europe is facing recession. The United States is facing recession, which I will show you in a second. But the problem for Saudi Arabia is it needs high prices under this environment. So some people may say, well, this hurts the overall world situation and may hurt the global south. According to reports, Saudi Arabia is actually not going to cut production to countries who need it, that are in its Asia markets, that are in its markets anywhere else. It's targeting the United States and the Western markets as a response to what's happened to Russia. So here is Saudi Arabia making an actual effort to be a decent friend to Russia, because Russia has been a decent friend to Saudi Arabia. And this isn't not just in the realm of maybe military armaments, because the United States has provided Saudi Arabia with far more military weaponry than Russia, but it really has to do with politics, right? The way Russia treats Saudi Arabia versus the United States is far different. The United States sees Saudi Arabia as kind of a beachhead of militarism in the region. It sees, but Russia sees Saudi Arabia as merely an important regional partner for stability and also for economic growth, right? And Russia practices a policy of non-interference similar to China's. And of course, that would be rebuked by some liberals and war hawks and neocons. They would say, well, what about Ukraine? Well, the Ukraine situation is much more complicated, given the fact that it was NATO that provoked it, and given the fact that Ukraine, after the coup happened in 2014, essentially became a NATO protectorate and has been used ever since as a launching pad to militarily encircle Russia, provoke Russia, and to spark and intensify a war of aggression, an economic war of aggression. And now we are seeing this spill over into a military war of aggression, which is intensifying.